Originating from a small workshop in Denmark, LEGO's first products were small wooden toys such as cars, houses, and even yo-yos. 10 years into LEGO's existence, it had the idea to produce plastic, modular toys that could be assembled together. These plastic bricks were refined over the years to become the famous LEGO bricks that propelled the LEGO Group to one of the largest toy companies. For nearly half a century after its creation of this new type of toy design, LEGO didn't have to do much for the business to keep coming in. The product was so recognizable and in such high demand, it seemed like the company would never stop growing. It simply rode off the success of its LEGO sets and focused on improving them as much as it could. But in 1998, something out of the ordinary happened. LEGO lost money. Management tried to save the company by laying off staff and introducing a variety of new products, desperately trying to innovate themselves out of trouble. But the trend continued, and in 2003, the losses grew even larger after another disappointing holiday season. Sales dropped 30% and another 20% in 2004, putting the company into a financial crisis. It was a clear sign that LEGO could not operate much longer without fundamentally changing its business. But how could LEGO, the fourth largest toy maker, be on the verge of going out of business? The toy market was shrinking. Kids were becoming more interested in consumer electronics such as video games, cell phones, and MP3 players. They also had more options at cheaper prices, as new toy companies were appearing, producing at much lower costs than LEGO. This new competition also benefited from the rise of large retailers like Walmart, primarily selling to them instead of the small toy shops LEGO sold to. Toy stores also stopped expanding, taken over by these massive retailers, which were only growing larger. This hurt LEGO because these new customers had new demands, such as quicker deliveries, more exclusive products, and lower costs, all things LEGO's new competitors were designed for. LEGO was an old company by this point and was years behind its competition, who focused on optimizing their production and forecasting, analyzing every little cost that went into making their product, whereas LEGO was designed for custom orders serving small retailers, without much care for the cost it required. Although LEGO produced some of the highest quality toys in the industry, it also ran some of the most expensive operations. Despite its incredible brand and popularity, it could no longer keep up with the changing business, and had to come up with a solution. The company turned to its operations and realized its only choice would be to simply spend less money. But this was harder in reality, as LEGO relied on thousands of suppliers, dozens of logistics operators, and several production facilities to produce over 10,000 unique LEGO pieces for its product line. Its enormous web of operations turned out over 20 billion bricks per year and had never really been adjusted for the company's entire history, but it was this massive operation that was hurting it. LEGO's product line had grown so complex that there were 12,000 unique pieces in over 100 different colors. Over the years, LEGO sets went from simplistic buildings to elaborate scenes with dozens of intricate details. It never considered the costs of this added creativity and could no longer afford to produce so many different items. Following a similar path were LEGO's suppliers. The amount of suppliers LEGO purchased materials from grew to 11,000, which led to excessive waste. Whenever an engineer designed a new component, they purchased it from whoever was selling, without much regard for the quantity or price. If they were designing an obscure piece used in only one set, they may have ordered a highly specific type of colored resin. Since material like this is sold in bulk quantities, much of it would end up being wasted, as the production of that specific piece would be low. Each engineer would operate by this process, and often even had individual relationships with suppliers. This not only made it difficult for LEGO to manage its supplier base as the company expanded, but it was becoming extremely costly as the size of its product line crept up. But LEGO's actual products were just the beginning of its issues. Chaos ensued daily at its production facilities, as operators were constantly responding to last-minute demands and implementing adjustments to production. They rarely had any clue as to how many items they needed to produce, as forecasting was so inaccurate, leading to the factory being used at only 70% of its potential. These issues flowed to logistics, which was causing some of the largest losses for the company. LEGO worked with thousands of toy retailers, ranging from small stores to large chains. Although they were each important, LEGO was spending as much time and effort on the thousands of small shops as the 200 large ones. The problem with this disproportionate attention was that the fewer larger shops generated 2/3 of LEGO sales. Since most of the effort was spent serving the thousands of shops bringing in less sales, fulfillment costs were substantial. Its distribution system involved dozens of logistics and transportation operators and several distribution centers around the world. This made it difficult to get the right products to the right customers on time, leading to costly practices, missed sales, and high inventory levels. LEGO needed to find solutions, and it needed to work quickly, as it could not operate at a loss for much longer. LEGO's executives came up with an action plan, a multi-phase strategy to lift LEGO out of its crisis and ensure its survival through the future. LEGO began selling off whatever it could to get quick cash so it could survive long enough to even attempt any changes. Production facilities, unused land, company jets, and even the LEGOland parks were sold off, quickly giving the company enough money to survive for a few more years. In just 2 years, LEGO sold $850 million worth of property and equipment and reduced its costs by over $200 million, giving it time to focus on fixing its operations. Next, the executives closely examined the company's operations. They knew most of their problems lied in logistics, but they had to first fix their production and supplier base. They began by reducing the number of unique pieces to 6,500 and cutting the number of colors in half. Material sourcing was also adjusted. The company's previous habits of buying from thousands of suppliers led to extremely volatile costs that it could not predict. The number of suppliers were narrowed to allow for more consistent prices on raw materials and easier production planning. These changes cut resin costs in half and reduced the number of suppliers by 80%, making further changes easier. The executives then adjusted production so that only certain machines would produce certain pieces within regular production cycles. LEGO was used to using every machine available to produce any piece, which required costly reconfigurations. Assigning pieces to certain machines for a few weeks at a time set expectations for what needed to be created and reduced the need for constant adjustments. These initial efforts set new standards for the company and would make the process of transferring logistics even easier. Logistics was still the biggest concern for the company, as most of its unnecessary costs were coming from inefficient order fulfillment. Millions were being lost each year throughout every step of LEGO's distribution, from manufacturing to customer deliveries. Its incredibly complicated network of production plants, distribution centers, and packing facilities was preventing the company from having a seamless flow of products to customers, and from accurately forecasting demand. The solution was to hire Ijo Moller-Nielsen, who would go on to be the savior of the company. Nielsen had prior experience creating operation strategies for large companies, but nothing compared to what LEGO had in store. He was tasked with reforming LEGO's global distribution process and bringing costs down by tens of millions of dollars each year. LEGO had production facilities in Denmark, Switzerland, Czech Republic, and the United States. It also had 11 warehouses and distribution centers in Denmark, Switzerland, France, and Germany that handled order fulfillment for the nearby regions. LEGO's European operations made up 60% of its sales, but were also the most fragmented. Nielsen proposed to combine all of these operations into a single, central distribution center close to LEGO's main European production facilities. LEGO's usual European operations involved transporting finished products to the distribution centers close to production facilities, then moving them again to a 30,000 square meter warehouse in Germany. From here, products were delivered on demand to one of the 4 other distribution centers around Europe. After passing through 2 or 3 facilities, products were finally delivered to the customers. Moving all of these operations under one roof would save time, reduce confusion, and eliminate expenses. Instead of building this new distribution center itself, Nielsen and LEGO decided to lease a 60,000 square meter warehouse and partner with DHL to handle its day-to-day operations. Outsourcing these operations was optimal for LEGO because it would not be responsible for unused storage capacity during the off-season months. An outsourcing partner could use that unused space for other customers, whereas it would just be completely idle if LEGO owned it. LEGO found Prague to be the most central location of the company's biggest European markets and decided to build the distribution center here. But this was an unusual location for such a project. While the city had low labor costs and a large pool of skilled labor, a distribution center of this size was unheard of in Europe, as most European companies had 2 or 3. In the rare case where they only had one, it was usually found in Germany, not the Czech Republic. Transportation companies were not used to shipping out of Prague, and the population had no experience running a distribution center. But these were all problems LEGO wanted to solve, as this project was estimated to save over $20 million a year, reducing its dozens of transportation partners to just 7. In the meantime, existing facilities were taken over by other partners. The production of simple, high-volume pieces at the Switzerland plant was outsourced to a facility in Hungary, which was operated by Flextronics. Flextronics also took control of the packing facility located in Kladno, Czech Republic. Production and packaging in the US were phased out completely and relocated to Mexico, and additional packaging facilities were closed across Europe. In total, 10 facilities across Europe and the US were shut down and had their operations transferred to the new facility in Prague. This was extremely challenging, as something of this scale had never been done before in Prague, and DHL immediately ran into issues. Training hundreds of employees at once with no distribution experience was harder than anticipated, and it was even more difficult to recruit hundreds of temporary workers for the 4-month peak season. DHL was forced to recruit non-English speakers, which its systems were not designed for. The same systems would also often come to a halt, as they could not handle the volume of transactions coming from LEGO. Additional people even had to be hired to manually print shipping labels for packages. Despite the size of this new facility, it quickly filled up, to a point where products were overflowing, and DHL had no choice but to use additional warehouses around the region. The 60,000 square meter space, which was designed to accommodate for 5 years of growth, was expanded to 150,000 square meters across 10 locations. But how could things have gotten so out of hand? These changes were supposed to help LEGO, not hurt it. To mitigate the transition of operations at its other facilities, LEGO ramped up production to account for any shortages or delays that may have occurred during the process. LEGO also pushed its customers for orders months in advance of the peak season, giving it more time to prepare for the demand. LEGO even changed the packaging for finished LEGO sets, altering the amount that could fit on a pallet. All of these changes ended up flowing to the Prague facility at once. However, none of them were communicated, and DHL went into panic when demand unexpectedly increased. DHL was forced to solve these problems, on top of the ones that came from opening a brand new facility. Truckloads of products were waiting days inside the warehouse, DHL could not find enough labor, and products were overflowing to warehouses scattered across the region. Communication issues and changing contract requirements caused a clash between LEGO and DHL. LEGO began sending people to Prague to solve the problems, but it was seen as an intrusion and turned into the two companies blaming each other. DHL was losing a lot of money, and LEGO still had not confirmed if this was going to work or not. But it was LEGO's only choice, so Nielsen stepped in to help. He changed the conditions of the contract to basically eliminate much of DHL's unfair costs, as DHL was going to lose over $1 million when they were expected to break even. Despite all of the chaos, good things did come out of these efforts. DHL worked tirelessly for a year and kept delivery delays to a minimum. LEGO had reached profitability years sooner than expected, saving $70 million from its first year of new operations. LEGO also learned how to operate its business even more efficiently after all of these struggles. When workers were being trained at the Prague facility, they realized how many unnecessary services they were providing to customers for free. LEGO had been creating specialized pallets that prevented efficient stacking, and truckloads were often being shipped at half capacity. This was because LEGO was shipping orders for small customers who had extremely specific requests, like a shipment of a single pallet with only one type of product. They made little effort to ship multiple orders together in bulk. Switching to a single distribution center also eliminated the excessive transportation of products LEGO once had. Prior to the Prague facility, a single LEGO product was handled in 2 or 3 distribution centers before it reached the store's shelves. Now it only traveled to 1 and could reach a customer in 3 to 4 days. LEGO was also now able to take advantage of being a large-scale shipper. Prior to this new structure, it relied on dozens of transporters for small shipments. LEGO was now enabled to ship full capacities much more frequently, and with the same providers, allowing for lower rates, even giving transportation providers a foundation to expand their networks between Czech Republic and other countries, as LEGO was the first to have such a massive operation here. From 2004 to 2006, LEGO transferred 70% of all its packing activities and 20% of its molding activities to external partners. Nielsen's and LEGO's efforts resulted in 20% savings in distribution costs and modernized the company, setting it up for a successful future. LEGO has since doubled in size, and the methods that were developed during this time are still used by the company today.